A company flew in from the US to look at our three lead molecules. And after 3 months of digging in, they told us kill two of them. And here's the part that stayed with me. It wasn't because of the science that it failed, it's because of the regulations. The rules of getting it approved and selling it in the market made the whole thing as a bad bet. Many years of work, millions of rupees written off. That was the day I understood in this industry a drug can die long before it reaches the patient. And the thing that decides majorly is regulatory. Let me show you how. So, on that note, welcome back. I'm your host, Jude Stephen. On this channel, we decode everyday work behind the drug development. The textbook splits drug development into four prominent stages: discovery, that which happens in lab or in academia; then non-clinical, where you test it on animals; then clinical trials, where you test it on humans; and then you launch it in the market for everybody's use. A clean single line. Last episode, I showed you how we fixed a problem midway through that line. If you missed it, go back and watch it. And if that left you thinking regulatory only shows up when there is some issue or something breaks, well, think again. Regulatory isn't a fire brigade that arrives when there is a fire. It is involved every stages of drug development, including the very first one, when the drug is still just an idea. Here's the story that taught me this. A year into my first company, a very normal day, then an email comes in from an head of R&D. A startup from the US wants a potential partnership and they want to evaluate our lead molecule in our pipeline. Just to quickly translate, pipeline means drugs that the company is working on but not yet launched or not moved any further. This partnership means money, shared rights, shared risks, so it's a big deal. Because of this, a task force is created and my manager was asked to lead. And I'm also brought in to coordinate with various stakeholders. Then begins the due diligence of 3 months. The US team is literally dissecting our science, our data, our strategy, checking everything before they could commit. 3 months later, they presented a report on our lead molecules. They recommended scrapping two of them. The reason? Extreme regulatory hurdles. The path to getting them approved was so long, so costly, so uncertain that the business case collapsed. Good science, but bad odds. Now remember, my company has poured in a lot of money and time into this. You don't just walk away easily. So they did what every company does, a desperate move to save the molecule. They came to regulatory and asked us to find a way to rescue this molecule. We tried our best. One of the classic moves that we tried is to position this molecule as a rare disease molecule. Regulators usually reward these kind of molecules. They reward it with faster pathways, waived fees, protected times, and even easier access to the market. Because somebody has to make drugs for small patient groups also. And without incentives, nobody would. In our case, unfortunately, it just didn't fit. The molecule couldn't be saved. And that was the lesson reorganized how I saw this whole industry. Regulatory matters even when a drug is nothing but a concept. Get it wrong at the idea stage, you can burn years and millions building something that's never going to see the light and being sold in the market. That failure sent me digging on how other companies avoid this. You know, how do one make hit after hit actually develop these kind of drugs? Before we see how they develop such kind of drugs, let me tell you how usually drugs comes into the industry. There are two major ways. First is you license or acquire those molecules from another company or from a university where all early sciences have already been done and then brought into the industry to fit into the industry. Second, they read various signals, what disease in the world needs a desperate, desperate development, and find answers and then develop a molecule around it. So here's the key move. It's a regulatory one. All right. The moment a molecule comes in the door, a good team writes a document called Target Product Profile, and we call it TPP. Think of the TPP like a blueprint you agree on before you build a house. There may be multiple changes down the line, but you don't change the entire backbone of it, right? Before a single brick is even laid, you decide how many rooms, what it is for, what it must cost, what it has to survive. For a drug, TPP says upfront what the disease it treats, how it is given, how well it must work, how safe it must be, with which market it's for, who's its competitor, and it's kind of a living document that keeps evolving as the molecule moves from discovery to clinical. Why does this save companies in many ways? Because you design from backwards. So you don't build something you can never be approved or sell. But sometimes it's just not easy to develop a TPP. However, it's important that we develop something similar to it and make sure we don't deviate from it. Let me show you an example how we use this TPP to develop a cancer drug molecule. Our scientists spotted early on in one of our molecule of interest, it is producing a specific sugar when it is, exponentially manufactured or when it is scaled up higher. It would have forced us to adopt to a newer technology which is far more expensive and difficult to set it up. It was caught early on the paper itself. We went looking for a different answers, different cells to make this drug work. Instead of discovering the problem years later and crores later in the lab. And did you notice what just happened? This is the fourth streams working again. We researched the requirements or the intelligence. We decided how to position this molecule, which the market path to choose. And the TPP itself is kind of a structured document that works on operation. Great. Now you may ask me a question. Okay, Jude, this is needed for a professional. Why should a normal person care how a drug is planned and developed? Here's why. Take FDA for an example. Before it approves certain drugs, especially cancer drugs, it can call a public meeting of an advisory committee. In cancer, it is called ODAC, the Oncologic Drugs Advisory Committee. These meetings, the company presents its drugs data to entire room of independent scientists, doctors, statisticians, and the public. This is in behind closed doors. These meetings are open to all, especially to the public, and it is even live streamed now. FDA broadcasts them on YouTube with a formal window for ordinary people to submit comments. The committee then votes, and then while it's just an advice, FDA usually follows it. Think about what it means. Patients, caregivers, ordinary citizens stand up and speak, and regulators listen and shape the rules around what they hear. Because at the end of this entire chain, the science, the strategy, the blueprints is one person who's going to use this. It's you. The one who actually takes the drug. So you have more power over the future than you ever realized. Knowing how the machine works is the first step to using it. So that's the beginning of the drug development through a regulatory lens. A molecule can live or die at the concept stage. And the smartest companies build the rules in from the day one. In next episode, we walk the first stretch of this line, discovery to non-clinical. And I'll show you how business, science and regulatory are wired together and why a good regulatory person has to understand all three. If this changed you, how you see the medicines in your cabinet, like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to see it. I'm your host, Jude Stephen. See you in the next one.